It's not every day that you get a chance to meet your hero. Back in the 90s, my very first car was a 94 EG Civic which I modified, and then I proceeded to upgrade to a 97 EK Civic which I also tuned and built. Now both of my Civics back then were inspired by the Honda Civic Type R, which was my dream car when I was a teenager. Now I didn't get a chance to drive the Civic Type R based on the EK9 back then, but fast forward to today, and I have this gorgeous beast right here with me for the past week. Now while we wait for the next generation Civic Type R to arrive based on the 11th generation Honda Civic, allow me to fulfill my boyhood fantasies and let me drive and review the 2019 Honda Civic Type R. Let's do this. Hello guys, I'm Reagan and welcome to the car review of my boyhood dream car. If you're new to my channel, I hope you click that subscribe button for your regular dose of Philippine automotive content. If you're my subscriber already, well guys, sit back, relax, and enjoy this show as much as I'm going to enjoy driving and reviewing this thing. Oh yeah, and click that like button. Also special thanks to Honda Cars Philippines for lending me the Civic Type R for 1 week to do this review. So I've been driving the Civic Type R for the past week now, and it's the one car that I borrowed that makes me want to drive it over and over again. I mean, never mind that it has that blissful short throw 6-speed manual transmission and I'm driving in hellish Manila traffic. Never mind that it has a dismal fuel economy figure of 6 kilometers per liter when you're driving it around the city. Whenever I get behind the wheel of this thing, it transports me back to my college days when I was a boy racer in the street racing scene. Now there are only a few lucky souls in the Philippines who are able to acquire this thing because Honda Cars Philippines only brought in 200 examples of the Civic Type R. Now these lucky souls had to shell out over 3 million Philippine pesos to put one of these Type Rs in their garage, but that price is super worth it. You see, this iteration of the Civic Type R is bound to be a future collector's item because it's the last version of the Civic Type R that was built in Honda's Swindon plant in the UK. Any future Civic Type Rs will now come from America, so this version of the Civic Type R is the last Civic Type R that likes to drink tea and eat crumpets. Now the Civic Type R is a front-wheel drive performance vehicle, so it is imperative to keep this front end low and planted to the ground at all times. Now that's where aerodynamics come into play. You see, the Civic Type R comes with this aggressive carbon fiber front splitter right there, and it even comes with a red accent. Now to further aid it with its downforce, it has a functional hood scoop right here, which some people confuse for a hood scoop that feeds cool air into the engine. Now that is not the purpose of this hood scoop. You see, this hood scoop feeds air inside the hood and channels that air into some pipes that are found here on the sides, on both sides of the hood, which helps to generate downforce and keeps this part of the front clip low and planted for maximum traction on your front wheels. Now all of this channeled air exits all the way here to the functional side air vents found on the front fenders of the Civic Type R. Now to further aid it with more aerodynamics and more downforce, this Honda Civic Type R also comes with a functional air vents here at the sides of the front bumper, which creates an air curtain and keeps both sides stable at all times. Now when you put all of these aero bits together, well, that makes the Civic Type R look pretty wild, but the good thing there guys is it all has a pretty good function. Now the side profile of the Civic Type R shows off its wild side. It's a polarizing look because there are some people who find it too aggressive and too wild, while there's another bunch of people who think that it's just about right. Now, I'm part of that camp that thinks that it's just about right because the Civic Type R has a racing pedigree and it's a performance vehicle, and these performance vehicles have every right to look wild. Now when you look at the side, it has the typical Honda Civic hatchback profile, but it does come with these carbon fiber skirts right here for added aggression and of course to improve on aerodynamics. Now, as I mentioned a while back, we also have a functional side air vent here on the front fenders, which not only help to extract heat out from those front brakes, but it also serves as the exit point for the air that's channeled into the hood scoop, into the hood, and out here on these functional side air vents right there. Now, when you look at the wheels of the Civic Type R, well, these are some pretty controversial wheels. You see, these are 20-inch alloy wheels and they're wrapped in rubber band thin tires. Now, these wheels look absolutely gorgeous, guys, and it fits the profile of the Civic Type R. But if you're driving this thing in potholed city streets like the ones we have here in the Philippines, well, you gotta be careful when you're driving this thing. Otherwise, you might break those fancy wheels. Now, when you look inside those wheels, you'll see that you have a set of Brembo cross-drilled 4-piston brakes up front, but we only have a set of solid discs here at the back. Now, the suspension of the Type R is a McPherson setup in the front and an independent multi-link rear suspension at the back. However, the Civic Type R comes with adjustable damping, so it changes depending on your drive modes. It can soften or stiffen up. Now finally, guys, well, the ground clearance of this Civic Type R is 132 millimeters, which is already quite low, but the fact that we have an extended front splitter right there, well, if you're going up a steep parking ramp, you gotta do the S move in order to negotiate that steep parking ramp. The design of the rear end ups the ante when it comes to the wildness factor. Of course, we have that Type R red Honda emblem badge right there, which is an homage to the first ever Japanese vehicle to win in Formula 1. Now, this particular race car was the Honda RA272, and it took the first place podium finish in the 1965 Mexican Grand Prix. Of course, when it did that, well, it happened to be painted in championship white, so that's the reason why the primary color of all Type Rs is championship white, and that's also where this red Type R Honda emblem came from. Now, the Type R gets some more fancy and functional aerodynamic bits right here in the rear. It gets a set of vortex generators on the top of the roof, which helps to clean up that exit air coming over the roof and channel it straight underneath this massive rear spoiler here, which helps to keep the rear end stable. Now, to further aid in that, we also have a secondary ducktail type spoiler here, which further plants the rear end on the ground. Now, with the Civic Type R also comes with the carbon fiber rear diffuser here, which helps to clean up that exit air. And in the center of that rear diffuser, we have the triple exhaust pipe system that is a signature of the Honda Civic Type R. Now, if you want to listen to that exhaust note, well, here's the exhaust note of the Civic Type R in Race Plus. Well, yeah, see, that's in Race Plus, but it doesn't really sound too loud and aggressive after all. Now, when you pop open this trunk, this hatchback, you'll see that despite all of the racing and performance aspirations of the Honda Civic Type R, well, it is still a pretty capable family vehicle. We have here 414 liters of cargo capacity, which is good enough to fit a couple of medium-sized luggage. So you could easily take your relatives or your family to the airport and arrive there in record time, but at the same time, you're carrying all of their luggage. Now, if you need more space than 414 liters, the back seat of the Type R also folds down, which helps to further expand your cargo capacity. Now, underneath the lightweight aluminum hood, we have here a 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged VTEC engine that puts out 306 horsepower and 400 Newton meters of torque. Now, all of that power is sent to the front wheels via a 6-speed manual transmission with auto rev match. Now, this thing might be a front-wheel drive vehicle, but the Civic Type R is one of the fastest front-wheel drive vehicles in the entire world. 0 to 100 kilometers per hour can be done in 5.9 seconds, all the way up to a top speed of 272 kilometers per hour. Now, the Civic Type R also comes with the front limited slip differential, which also helps to minimize on its torque steer. Now, if you direct your attention under the hood, you will see the channels or the pipes that I mentioned right here, which helps to create the downforce and keeps those front wheels planted at all times. The cockpit of the Civic Type R is track focused, but it doesn't sacrifice when it comes to comfort and convenience. In fact, these Civic Type R specific racing seats right here are some of the most comfortable racing seats that I've ever sat on. Sure, the bolsters are pretty aggressive, but they're not too aggressive that you'd feel like you'd need to go on a diet. Now, these are the absolute perfect racing seats, at least in my opinion. Now, the Civic Type R we have here has this black and red leather steering wheel here, which tells me that this is really the pre-facelift Civic Type R, because the facelifted Type R already comes with the full Alcantara steering wheel. However, the wheel also adjusts for tilt, and it also telescopes. Yeah, so that's pretty much expected from a performance vehicle that costs more than 3 million Philippine pesos. Now, when you look at the instrument gauge cluster here, this is a typical Honda Civic digital instrument gauge cluster, but I do like the fact that the Civic Type R gives me more information like your boost gauge, your rev indicator, you even have a lap timer, and even a G-force meter right here. Now, when you move over to your infotainment system here, we have a 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system that surprisingly comes with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Now, it also has a reverse camera, which is a good convenience, especially since we have that big wing right there at the back. Now, when you move down from your 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system, we have here a fully automatic dual zone climate control system there. And of course, we have here our shifter with that titanium, that signature titanium ball shifter, that ball shift knob, which is a signature of all Civic Type Rs. Now, below that shifter, we have here a plate that says Civic Type R plus the serial number of this particular vehicle, which tells you that this is a special performance vehicle. And right beside that plate, we have here the toggle switch for your drive modes. You see, the Civic Type R has 3 drive modes. It has Comfort, Sport, and Race Plus. And I like the fact that the default drive mode setting of the Civic Type R is Sport. So, yeah. Once you start it up, it's already on sport mode. So that is pretty awesome, guys. Now, right across that, we have here an electronic parking brake with a brake hold feature. And I'm not really complaining about the loss of an actual manual handbrake, because this Honda Civic Type R is a front-wheel drive performance vehicle. So yeah, you couldn't really power slide or drift this thing. So that electronic park brake with that brake hold feature, that is super convenient, guys. Now, we also have here a couple of cup holders, which, despite being my dream car from the 90s when I was a teenager, I was still subjected to my clean canteen test. So let's see. Yeah, it easily fits, guys. So the Civic Type R passes my clean canteen test. Now, when it comes to the safety bits of this performance vehicle, well, Honda also did not scrimp on the safety features, because as you can see on your screen, you get a full host of safety bits right here. It's a great news, guys, that we have all of these safety features, because this is a performance vehicle, and in case you lose control of your Civic Type R and you figure in an accident or in a crash, you'd be happy to know that this Civic Type R has received 5 stars in the Euro NCAP safety rating. But then, guys, yeah, please be very careful when you're driving. You could drive fast, but just be careful, because I don't want you to crash your Type Rs, okay? So please, be careful, okay? The back seat of the Type R is roomy and usable, which is something that you wouldn't really expect from a performance vehicle. Having said that, guys, well, this Civic Type R is truly a practical performance car. Now, I'm 5'6", guys, and this is my driving position, and I got a good 6 inches of knee room here and around 4 inches of headroom. Now, the seats are also pretty comfortable, which is something that you wouldn't expect from a vehicle that can beat the BMW M2 around the Nürburgring. Now, when it comes to toys and amenities here, well, we don't really get much toys here at all. But who needs toys, guys, if you can have red seat belts here at the back? Alright guys, so we're now driving the Honda Civic Type R, my boyhood dream car guys. And as I mentioned, I've been driving this thing for a week now, but it still surprises me how light it is to drive, how easy it is to drive this thing. The clutch is light. In fact, it is way lighter than the clutch I experienced with the WRX STi. In fact, it's a little bit lighter than even my Mazda MX-5's clutch. The thing is, the engagement point of this Civic Type R's clutch is on the high side, which is pretty typical from the Civics that I drove back in the 90s. The 6-speed short throw manual transmission is also a bit clunky at first, but once this thing warms up, man, it delivers the same rifle bolt action that you can expect from a performance short throw 6-speed manual. Now the steering feel of this thing is surprisingly good for an electric power assist system. It has a nice weighted feel to it, and yeah, the amount of feedback and communication that this wheel is giving me, it's phenomenal guys. The turn-in is also pretty sharp. I don't know if you saw, but I took that corner pretty fast back there, and yeah, the turn-in is really good owing to the 20-inch alloy wheels. You know guys, when it comes to the suspension of this Civic Type R, it is surprisingly livable even when you put it on sport mode, which is the default setting. Most of the jitters that come into the cabin are likely due to the rubber band thin tire sidewalls that this 20-inch stock wheels have, which is why most Civic Type R owners would tend to swap these 20-inch wheels for smaller 19-inch wheels so that they can get a thicker tire sidewall. Now when it comes to the acceleration of the Type R, well, it has that visceral acceleration feel, but it's not brutal. Surprisingly, for a front-wheel drive vehicle, it is also quite controllable despite that visceral acceleration feel that this car would give you. You know, the turbo boost will kick in at around 3,000 RPM, but it's not it's not a seat in your pants type of a turbo boost, but it feels more like the VTEC systems from the Civics from the 90s. You could really say, yo, VTEC kicked in, yo! It has that smooth input at around 3,000 RPM, but from there, from 3,000 RPM all the way up to its red line of 7,000, it would pull and pull and pull and pull hard. I love this thing, man. Now, I put it also on Race Plus, and I was quite surprised because while the response sharpened up and the acceleration became more urgent, it doesn't really feel too scary. Which is what I didn't experience when I test drove the WRX STi. See, look at this, we're attacking this corner, and man, it is so controllable. It is so easy, man. Yeah, the Type R is one of those convenient performance cars, which really helps you when it comes to these driving moments at the edge. Now, when it comes to the handling and cornering of this thing, well, Honda tuned the Civic Type R to be a surgical track weapon. As such, it takes corners with such neutral balance that you wouldn't believe it's a front-wheel drive. The tires grip well. There is a minimal body roll because of that adaptive suspension that this thing has. And yeah, it will give you so much confidence when you're attacking corners at a fast clip. The brakes are also superb. Even if the Type R only has 4 pistons on its cross-drilled Brembo brakes, well, the brake feel is well modulated and it bites really hard. Hard enough that it could easily stop this if you're going at a much faster pace than you'd normally do. Now, in the past week that I've been daily driving this Civic Type R, it's really quite surprising that for so much performance, you can get a really comfortable daily driver. The seats are super comfortable despite being racing seats, and if you shift it in comfort mode, well, the suspension would also soften up, giving you a more comfortable ride. It could also be quite docile when you're going around the city streets like what we're doing now. And you could just putt around town without really having to wring the engine out every single time. The thing is, if you want to wring it out like that, you would hear that whoosh, whoosh, whoosh of the blow-off valve coming from the engine. And it's such an intoxicating feeling. So that's what makes this Civic Type R my personal dream car. Because yeah, it's practical enough for daily driving use, guys. But if you just want to attack corners like what we're gonna do now here, see? Wow! Oh yeah! So neutral, it's so well balanced. And I love it, guys. I love it. I love it much, much more than the WRX STi. And I love it almost as much as my own Mazda MX-5. Yeah. Civic Type R for the win, baby! Overall, guys, well, the Honda Civic Type R is one of the friendliest, easiest to drive performance vehicles that I've driven so far. It's way, 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 way friendlier than the WRX STi because of the light clutch and that comfortable overall drive. Wow, yeah. This is a performance vehicle that I can really envision myself seeing it in my garage and driving it every day. Even if it has a 6-speed manual transmission, the fact that we have such a light clutch here and such a nice and soft suspension when you're on comfort mode, but when you toggle it to sport or race plus, yeah, this thing just transforms. Man, I could really see why there are so many Honda Civic Type R fanboys out there, because guys, this is one hell of a performance car. Oh yeah! Woo! Woo! I love the sound of the blow-off valve. Oh yeah! The Honda Civic Type R is one of a few vehicles on the road that combines looks, performance, practicality, and pedigree all in one package. The good news there is it doesn't cost an arm and a leg to give you all that, well, relatively speaking. The bad news though is it's all sold out unless one of the 199 lucky souls out there will decide to part with their Honda Civic Type R. Yeah, fat chance that's gonna happen. Well, we can always wait for the next generation Honda Civic Type R based on the 11th generation Civic. I do hope that Honda Cars Philippines will decide to bring in a bunch of those as well. Well, I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Anyway guys, thanks for watching.